If you remember the old MTV Basement Tapes show, you remember that one, Bitchen Party from the Lopez Beatles. It was one of the most memorable videos for me during a program that unearthed some excellent music. These guys were out of the LA area, and one of the members is with me now, Bruce D. Rhodewalt. Welcome to the program.
Thanks. I'm excited to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us here on Revenge of the 80s. What brought all of you together to form the band?
Robert, the guitarist, the other guitarist, and I were working together at the LA Weekly. He was typographer, meaning typist, typesetter, and I was one of the writers writing about the early 80s scene in LA as it was happening. And I decided I wanted to put together a band that would be it would have children's songs and TV theme songs, and they might or might not be the actual thing. It might be something I wrote. And I walked down the hall and I said, I'm thinking of this band. He said, that's a good idea. And I said, but I got a guitarist, another guitarist, and I need a keyboard player. And he said, I can play keyboards. And he really can play keyboards. He plays anything. He does a lot of mandolin these days.
Well, that's a good combo, keyboards and mandolin.
Exactly. And he's left-handed, but he plays stringed instruments right-handed.
Well, that's the best way to do it. You just throw a curveball to your audience. That's the way it should be.
Exactly.
Bruce, you were a media guy, writing for various LA publications, and you and I guess one of the other guys were critics before the band started. You also brought in David Vaught, your original bassist who played with the Association. So you had a pretty good lineup to start with here.
Yeah, David joined us because he was a friend of Jim's, and Jim was our drummer. We put an ad in the paper and said we needed a musician to play snare drum, and Jim was still kicking himself over not answering an ad for a drummer for 45 Grave. And so he said, I'm going to respond to the very next ad. And so he did, and we brought him on. He was a friend of Dave's, and they played in country bands together in LA forever. And Dave Vaught is, I don't know if you ever heard of John Wayne.
I've heard of him. He was doing some movies here and there somewhere along the line.
I don't know about movies. Yeah, probably, maybe. I don't know. But Dave created this character of a failed country musician who moved to Fresno because he thought Merle Haggard lived there, and they built this whole persona out of this failed country musician, and that band was called John Wayne, and he was called John Wayne. And so anyway, Jim asked him to play bass with us. I don't think he liked it that much. I think we were a little too serious and amateur for him. We had rehearsals and stuff, so that wasn't his thing.
Okay, I'm going to go with what MTV said, so if I'm wrong, correct me on this, all right? Because if I remember correctly, you originally called yourselves the Beatles.
That's a story we like to tell. That's all marketing. We thought it would be fun to call ourselves the Beatles, but we never really did. We immediately, I lived in Echo Park, which is, at the time was 90% Hispanic, Central Americans and Mexicans. And every other store was called Lopez something. So there was a Lopez tires store and a Lopez Taqueria and stuff. So we called ourselves Lopez Beatles.
That makes a lot of sense, although the Silver Beatles were still available at the time.
That's true.
Yes.
That's a very good point. We probably should have done that.
Maybe the Silver Lopez Beatles. That could have worked.
Yeah, or Beatles Argento, or whatever Spanish is for silver. Plata or something.
With me on Revenge of the 80s Radio is Bruce Rhodewalt of the Lopez Beatles. I'm Chris Cordani. Pumpkin, our official wiener dog, is with me here as well. Bruce, take us back to 1982. When you were playing your first gigs, there was a signature performance in the summer at Whiskey A Go-Go. A lot of bands at the time dreamed to play there.
Yeah, it was really, really exciting. You want me to say more? It was really, really, really exciting. All of our favorite bands were playing there at the time, and of course it had this long history of go-go and pop music and things like that. So that was really fun. We opened for a band called Fella Johnson and the Johnsons, and we made $50.
And you still got to play on that stage, so $50, the stage, all good, right?
In the back and the dressing room.
Now, in the next couple of years, the Lopez Beatles played gigs at some of the great clubs of the 80s and shared bills with groups like the Rave Ups. So a lot of things were happening for you guys, really.
It was really exciting. And, Robert and I were sort of had these burgeoning careers as rock critics, which I guess is a major conflict of interest, but there was nobody in charge of it. So we went ahead and did that anyway. And we had a problem, which was we had trouble getting together on Fridays and Saturdays because of various activities that people were involved in. So we never got to play any of the really, really huge shows other than that whiskey show. So it was really fun, and I love doing music. Eventually, we sort of went our separate ways.
We'll get into that, and we'll also get into your the Bitchen Party song, the video, and the Basement Tapes competition. But first, before we do all of that, tell our listeners about the Lopez.
The Lopez were some young ladies we knew who were performers, and we brought them in to do backup singing on 3 or 4 songs.
Chris Cordani with Bruce Rhodewalt of the Lopez Beatles here on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Straight ahead, we'll talk about the song that gave them national attention on the Basement Tapes, plus what they've been doing in recent years. I'm Chris Cordani. This is Revenge of the 80s Radio. The Lopez Beatles with their cover of Philosophy of the World by the Shags. With me is Bruce Rhodewalt of the Lopez Beatles. Bruce, that's some song, and I'll tell you what, the Shags are hard to cover.
Yeah, I'm really proud of that. I think we made something out of that, and something that you can actually perform rather than just sit around and be aghast at. I love the Shags, and in fact I made a pilgrimage there. I was in New York once, and I borrowed a car and drove up to Fremont, New Hampshire, and poked around and tried to meet them. They weren't around, but I tried to.
You made the effort.
Yeah, and they were all still alive then, too.
The thing about the Shags is Frank Zappa considered them better than the Beatles. He said it, so it had to be true.
Yeah, and Carla Bley said they bring my mind to a complete halt.
I'm a Shags guy myself. There's nothing like blasting the Shags right here when I just need to listen to some great music. It's hard to describe their music, but it just worked.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it was completely original.
Bruce, the Lopez Beatles became more well-known after joining the Basement Tapes competition. That's the one where a lot of garage bands or bands who didn't get signed yet send their videos to MTV. It's like a game show. It was almost American Idol before American Idol and with good music.
Yeah, and before the internet and, before everything all went to hell.
But when videos were at their heyday, so you still had to produce a really good one and tell a story with it and impress a very discerning audience, if you will. How did you get into the competition? What made you want to do this?
I'm sure Glenn did it. Glenn Morgan was working for, I forgot her name, Mary something. She was making videos for Madonna, and Glenn was an editor, and he decided he wanted to be a video director. And he approached us and said, look, this song is good. We can make a video out of it. Let's do it. And so we did that. We had 2 shoots in the summer of '85, and got some attention. It won some prizes, a little competition at the LA Times, and showed up on the Basement Tapes. It showed up local TV in LA a couple of times too.
So what made you choose Bitchen Party as the song to represent you, the Lopez Beatles?
Glenn chose it because Glenn wanted to make a video, and he could see that it had video potential, which obviously it did. And he contacted us and said, this is the one we want to do. And we were pretty excited about that. We had to do an official recording, so there was a record that came out at the same time. I think we made about 700 of those. And the video's been great. I teach high school now, and every once in a while someone walks into my room and says, hey, I saw your video. I tell them about it every year, but they act like it's a surprise or a secret. Yeah, some 17-year-old walks in and says that we're his favorite band for that afternoon.
It was a funny video too. I mean, it was great because yes, a lot of bands threw parties to show off their music, and that's the foundation of the whole thing. But you got to love the guy from the beginning that was dancing and jumping around all over the place. He was the highlight of the whole thing.
He was my buddy Jim. We were roommates for a while, and he was the world's biggest, at least in my tiny circle, collector of records, and he was shameless. So we said we needed a dancer, and he decided to dance like that. And he danced at the I had a birthday party last September, and the band played in this huge theater, and he danced there too. He's good at dancing, even though he's old now.
Glenn Morgan became big time after this too, as a matter of fact.
He's a producer. Geez, Glenn, I'm sorry, I don't have all these facts in front of me. Real World producer. I think he produced the Real World in New Orleans, and he's been doing editing of most of the Real World episodes since that show started.
Bruce Rhodewalt of the Lopez Beatles is with me on Revenge of the 80s Radio. As far as Bitchen Party's lyrics, I read that you guys really didn't have lyrics from the beginning. You just threw them around during live shows. Then you kind of had to come up with them for the competition.
Yeah, we needed to fix them, pin them down in order to come up with something that could be made into a video. So although Glenn didn't get writing credits, we did, Robert and I did run our lyrics by Glenn and got his approval so that we knew we'd be ready for making a video out of the song.
I would like to party with Quasimodo, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, or the heads of NATO, whatever, it would be great.
Well, in fact, I produce a few shows, okay? A couple of shows in New York City, and I had a brief chat with Anders Rasmussen. As you know, a recent former Secretary General of NATO. Now, he seemed like...
Are you serious?
I'm serious.
Wait, you're kidding.
I'm not kidding.
Okay.
Now, Anders seemed like the kind of guy who, had he been the Secretary General back in 1985, would have been at your party. I wholly believe that.
Definitely. Everybody wanted to be there.
Where did you get all the extras for the video, not to mention the Japanese tourists, easy riders, and karma salesmen?
Well, one of the Japanese tourists is my girlfriend, and we're married. We've been married for over 30 years, have 2 kids, 2 amazing grown children. The other one was her friend, my friend Audrey. We rounded up people. A couple of the dancers we found through some kind of ad. I don't remember. Glenn did all that work. Glenn and Ellen Pittleman were the producers of the whole thing. Denise Russell, the punch girl, she's my friend. Casey, the makeout girl at the end, she's our friend. Hank Dittmar, who was making out with her, was the director of the Santa Monica Airport at the time.
Oh, you had everybody at the party. I'll tell you
Yeah,
that.
we had a few people there. Interesting thing was one of the biggest names in this, Bill Pope, was one of the cinematographers. He's been cinematographer for huge movies, The Matrix, The Jungle Book, Matrix Reloaded. So if you Google Bill Pope, you'll find his name all over the place. Spider-Man 2. I'm on Google right now, IMDb. So he's a contributor to the movie too.
Bruce, you didn't win, but you were also in the bracket with the winner Digny Figness and Girl with the Curious Hand. If you did happen to win and you got the recording contract, those fans who loved the music and loved you locally would realize that you were a lot more than just Bitchin' Party. You had the single with Spinaroo released, pressed a limited edition single, like you said beforehand. You also had plenty of other good music. Were there any plans for an album at the time, even if you weren't going to win the contest?
Yeah, I think we were kind of working on an album. We went into Dave Vaught's studio and recorded 8, 9, 10 songs, something like that. They all have scratch vocals. We never got the actual vocals down, but some of them on the website have, you'll hear there's passable vocals on some of those. And yeah, I don't know. We never really saw ourselves as an album band, although it does sound like fun thinking about it now.
You were still in the middle of the LA music scene, the punk scene, the alt-rock scene. So, in your opinion, Bruce, what were the Lopez Beatles' coolest moments among the LA alt-rockers on the streets in the middle of the whole thing in the early to mid-'80s?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I always saw us sort of as a although nobody I talked to since ever agrees with me. I always saw us as sort of a second tier Paisley Underground. We did songs from the 60s. We did No Matter What Shape Your Stomach Is In, which was Alka-Seltzer theme song, and covers of Indian Giver by 1910 Fruit Gum Company. And we played with Red Cross, another band then that's still around. I don't know. We played with the Rain Parade a lot. I liked those guys and I liked their songs and it was fun playing with them. the whiskey was just the greatest. The whiskey was really fun. One thing that happened was we were playing at a place in LA called the Music Machine, which had really, really low ceilings. And I remember Robert and I had all these 12-inch square cardboard supports for LPs, because the record companies would send LPs to us to be reviewed. Robert and I were both music critics, and we had dozens of these things. And one day we decided to paint them as if they were collector's cards. We painted all these, and we were playing, and I was throwing those out into the audience, sort of flinging them, and they were spinning. And I remember I couldn't see where they were going because of the spotlights. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really exciting, because I don't know whose eye this is going to land in. Could be a friend of mine, could be someone who's a lawyer, naked lawyer, I don't know.
Bruce Rhodewalt of the Lopez Beatles is with us here on Revenge of the 80s Radio. Now, you all kind of went your separate ways. You sometimes get back and forth together. Do you all still hang out together?
Robert and Doug get together. We don't see Jim too much. I don't know. Robert and I, for the longest time, kept going to Coachellas together. And I always thought we would play there. I owned the domain name Coachella.com before Golden Voice started that whole thing. And I live about 3 miles from the place. And so they bought that from me. And if I had been a better negotiator, I would have made, first of all, a pair of tickets in perpetuity as part of the deal rather than just cash. And then also, a gig on the opening slot of the first show. But anyway, Robert and I are friends. And the band got together and we played for my birthday last year at the theater at the high school where I work. It's a 600-seat theater. It's absolutely beautiful, and it was really fun playing there. We had a great time together. That was fun.
Bandmate Robert Lloyd has also played on a lot of other projects, including Peter Buck's all-star band, The Baseball Project.
Yeah, Robert gets around. He's kind of shameless. He'll if you ask him to show up somewhere with an instrument on a stage, he'll do it. In fact, I think he was in San Francisco playing recently, and then a few days later at Glendale playing at this tribute to the band featuring Garth Hudson. So, yeah, sorry, Robert, if you're hearing this and you don't like the word shameless. There was another one I was thinking of, but shameless was the nice one. Robert likes to play music, and he loves people. He's a people person.
You can find out more about Robert Lloyd's projects on his website, houseofhere.com. That's houseofhere.com. There's a discography, tour dates, places he's played, worked with the Lopez Beatles, the Romans, the Baseball Project. All of his stuff, find it right there.
Yeah.
In 2015, the Lopez Beatles released a live album. That's available on your Bandcamp page, lopezbeatles.bandcamp.com.
If you say so. I never saw it before. Now I'm looking at it. Oh, the Kit Kat Club. Man, we loved playing at the Kit Kat Club. I don't know what it was about the Kit Kat Club. We liked it. Maybe it was the silly name or something.
And you had some different lyrics to Bitchen Party again, so.
Yeah. We had a good time there. Man, I forgot about that. That was a fun show. Yeah, we had an instrumental, fake tiki instrumental called Luau Sunset. That was mine.
They also recorded some new songs that you wrote, Bruce.
Well, we did new songs at the show last September. Taco Trucks on Every Corner, which of course was a response to election shenanigans. and then there's a song called Three Rants that includes some election-inspired opinions also. We have a show coming up sometime this spring. We haven't fixed the date yet. At McCabe's Guitar Shop in Santa Monica. McCabe's has been there for, 60 years, 50 years. It's been hosting all kinds of shows forever, and we're going to do our first show there sometime this spring. So we'll be rolling out taco trucks on every corner there, too.
Nothing better than beer, tacos, and some great music, Bruce.
I agree, 100%.
Bruce Rhodewalt, thank you for coming on Revenge of the 80s Radio with us.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Chris.
Let's play another classic Lopez Beatles track, Spinaroo, on Revenge of the 80s Radio.